How are you doing today, Peter?
Good, man. How you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this, Mr. Jimmy. And the reason why is because Led Zeppelin has always been the great mystery. It's always been that band that we think we know, but we don't. And we need things like this for us to go, wow, I needed to know this.
Yeah, I think agreed. There's something extra cool and extra mysterious about, say, Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin. And I think, it's funny, going into this, I already had a couple hundred Led Zeppelin bootlegs, so I kind of thought I knew it all. But working with Akio, and once you wind up in a Japanese basement with an 80-year-old amplifier guru soldering in capacitors, you realize, maybe there are levels to this game, and there's a lot more to learn.
One of the shocking things about Jimmy Page was I didn't realize that basically it was his band, his idea. And I always, because of the front man, I always had, it's Robert Plant. But man, I'm so glad that Classic Rock Radio said, no, you need to think a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, I think that ultimately a band is an alchemy of the members. So I can't slight in any way any member. But at the same time, Jimmy Page is a visionary. As a producer, he did, in a way, scout out the members. He scouted out Robert Plant's voice and realized this was a nuclear weapon in sonic form. And Mr. Plant pointed towards John Bonham, another incredible weapon in a way. And he scouted out John Paul Jones in the studio. And in the studio setting, Mr. Page is a masterful producer. I mean, that's why these records are still so cracking. I mean, like Led Zeppelin 2 is recorded in 1969. It still absolutely is a killer, kick-ass record. I mean, Whole Lotta Love sounds like it was recorded yesterday. And importantly, when other people tried to recruit John Bonham to play on their records, did it sound the same as it did on a Mr. Page record? No, because Mr. Page is the master of miking and of how to bring that sound about. So, no, absolutely. And Mr. Page is the architect as well musically. I mean, Achilles' Last Stand, what a genius piece of orchestration. So I think this film it's completely deep in many ways, but in other hands, it's just beginning the discussion of all the wonderful things that Mr. Page did as, like you said, a player, a writer, a producer, a sort of visionary for creating this band, and then also just his onstage coolness of being iconography of Zeppelin. I mean, Zeppelin show is kind of something beyond. Something dangerous, something that put an audience into a trance. It's something different. And that's what Akio really fell in love with when he was 19, watching Page on stage, being entranced by him, seeing that a spectacle in its finest form, how it could become something beyond. So, yeah.
Well, I was so inspired by him impersonating, or actually letting Jimmy Page move through him in a creative form, in the way that I always thought that Jimmy Page didn't want people to watch him play, but yet this guy's got it down. He's really got it down.
Yeah, well, Akio just, he's truly one of one. He is one of one, and I feel like that is the only reason that Mr. Page, along with Mr. Plant, John Paul Jones, and the estate of John Bonham, signed off on their music in this movie being performed by Akio.
Wow.
If Mr. Page had seen him, face to face in that club, watched him play from a distance of 15 feet, there's absolutely no chance they would have authorized 30 of their compositions to appear in this film performed by Akio. He really is special. I think he's like the way Yo-Yo Ma is to Bach, Akio is to Led Zeppelin. There's a million tribute bands in the world. I wish them all well. Unfortunately, most of them, they're simply really not up to the level. And what Akio is doing is, again, it's extraordinary, like you said. And, it's not just one thing. It's the playing, it's the stage presence, it's the attention to detail, and a little bit of magic. It's all there.
It's so funny when you say stage presence, because I just heard an interview with Michael Bolton, and he talked about how you have to go and watch yourself in the mirror, because that's how people see you. And I often wonder if someone like a Jimmy Page or a Keo would practice in the mirror to make sure they were getting it right.
It's funny. I asked Akio because one thing that's really striking, even in the movie, and there's this famous moment in Song Remains the Same, right before the drums kick in on Since I've Been Loving You, when Jimmy Page sort of leans way back and comes crashing forward. And it's so iconic that when Akio is recreating the Madison Square Garden concert in that little club in Tokyo, you see in that moment Akio doing it on stage, and you see Mr. Page doing it in his chair.
No!
In sync, because it's just this, it's like a visceral thing. You kind of have to do it in that moment. And also Mr. Page might have been wanting, all right, is he going to do, he's doing all them, blown away that Akio is doing all those moves. Now, I asked Akio, you have them sort of down. Do you look in the mirror? Do you study it? Oh, no. It just kind of comes to me. I don't necessarily totally believe that, but it's part of it. I mean, it's the reason why so many of these tribute bands just are not up to snuff, because the look and the feel is part of the magic of rock and roll. And nobody was cooler than Jimmy Page on stage in the 70s. So it's a high bar.
It's so funny you say that, because I won a poster of Led Zeppelin at the fair in Billings, Montana. I had no idea who the band was, but once that poster went on my wall, it was time to dig in.
Yeah, there's something, I think what Jimmy Page captured was that iconography thing. And I don't think it was necessarily conscious or not, but it's something about, there was something so magical and mysterious about Page, say from 73 onwards, with the stage costumes and dragon suits as they evolved, that it was like another world. So as a kid watching The Song Remains the Same and these wild outfits and these extended trippy solos, that was really cool, because it just showed you something beyond the cookie cutter world of pop music.
Yeah. What did you learn? Because, I mean, to see this happening, these are two completely different generations, and for you to take your lens in there to capture it, you had to have picked up on something.
Oh, yeah, a million things. I had never been to Japan before I made this film, and being there 3 or 4 days, instantly I was kind of light bulb went off. I was like, oh, of course Akio is like, of course he is this detailed. In Japan, and this is a simplistic interpretation, but order, detail, respect, precision, it is imbued in the culture in every layer. And I remember being there for a couple of weeks, having to do laundry, going to a laundromat, putting 100 yen into a machine, getting a little box of soap detergent. And the box of soap detergent was so beautiful. It was like a little work of art, and it was a box of laundry detergent. I took a photo of it. I was like, this is too beautiful to open and rip apart. You go into a 7-Eleven, it was like going into Tiffany's on Fifth Avenue. Wow. It was like, welcome to our store. Thank you so much for coming. I was like, am I in a 7-Eleven? What is going on? It was so precise, so beautifully rendered. And I learned a wee bit about Japanese culture. And then really, I just learned about because the thing that comes out is Akio's recreating, say, a 1970 sound versus a 1973 sound versus 75 sound, is this amazing progression of Mr. Page's guitar sound and how it was constantly moving forward. And it wasn't static. He never, ever rested on his laurels. He was trying new sounds, new things. His guitar tone from 70, totally different to 75. And that just harkens back to the original. You want to dig into the records and the live recordings, because Page was just constantly pushing it.
So we saw Jimmy Page work with David Coverdale. He's been known to work with other people. Do you think he would do something with Akio?
Probably not. I mean, that might be a
Stretching it.
little too
Yeah.
Nabokov or somebody might write about it. Like, I feel like, playing with your double or imitator. Who knows? I think it could be a curious. I mean, obviously, if he's said, "Hey, I'd like to do this," Akio would be there. So I don't know if I see that necessarily happening. Um, but I think there's no doubt still that Mr. Page really took seriously the work that Akio had done,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, that endorsement changed Akio's life, and no one, more than me, more than you, no one can appreciate the work it took for Akio to do this and recreate, say, a 26-minute Dazed and Confused more than the man who played it himself, Mr. Page.
God. Just to get into that moment. And that's the thing about it, is that this guy, Akio, really gets into that moment, which is what lead guitarists are supposed to do, because when they close their eyes and take off, as a fan of music, we take off as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I kept thinking, filming Akio, like, I filmed him a lot over years and years, thinking, all right, man, you've been doing these numbers yourself now for 30, 35 years. You've played Stairway to Heaven 12,452 times. You're going to maybe phone it in tonight, even you might clock out for 60 seconds. Man, not once, not for 1 second. His friend Makoto in the movie says, Akio has held on to that. He calls it Led Zeppelin shock of a teenage feeling of hearing it for the first time, feeling it for the first time, falling in love with the record. And we can all connect to that. We all remember a record, a riff, a moment, something that you felt you were so infatuated, so in love with an artist or a record, a sound. And now we're all jaded and cranky and old, and and being around Akio, he's in his late 50s, and he still has that. And on stage, like you say, he's totally still there. It's like when I was dancing around in my underwear in my bedroom as a teenager playing air guitar to Song Remains the Same live. Man, was I ever happier in my whole life? No. And Akio is that stain and that pureness and that energy and that excitement to this day on stage. It's pretty great.
How did he change when he moved to California?
I think I think he elevated as a performer by virtue of Led Zeppelin plays an insane amount of shows a year. I mean, they're playing maybe 3 nights a week, 50 weeks a year. So, he had gone from playing a couple shows a month to 150 times a year or something like that. Wow. So I think it just elevated his stage presence. More comfortable being on stage. And so stage chops and stage presence completely elevated. Obviously, his English got better. And I think he really liked playing for an American audience, because in Japan, I mean, I love Japan, love going there, but it's dead quiet during a song. I mean, the audience is just sitting there respectfully watching, and then they quietly wait for the last cymbal crash to fade out. And when the fade is complete, like it's just a different vibe. And that, I mean, in some ways, that's performers can really like that. I think Jimmy Page talked about how it was kind of cool because you could actually, during all the improvisation, you could hear what everybody else was doing. At the same time, Akio really loves the fun and the energy of an American audience. Yeah, let's go. Oh, wow. Like giving him that energy. So he really likes that.
This documentary has got to be for closet guitar gods as well. Those that are sitting at home that, they pull up their guitar, they play it in the garage, or they'll do it in their living room. But man, they need something that's going to bring them out to be seen, because there's such a music story in the hidden away world of music.
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie, hopefully appeals to obviously people who love Led Zeppelin, guitar freaks and nerds, but I think also you can just connect with. Maybe you're not a Led Zeppelin fan. Maybe you love Huey Lewis. Who doesn't love Huey Lewis? But you might connect with just someone chasing their dream, because for 40 years, Akio has pursued one thing,
Wow.
one love in life. All this man wants to do is play the music of Led Zeppelin. Please give me a stage. Please give me an opportunity to perform. It's all he wants to do. And like all of us in life, unfortunately, at some point you get your ass kicked. You take one on the chin. You know, in his case, he wound up in Studio City without an agent, without a manager, without a band, without a gig, without a show. And having to consider, do I take my day job again? You know, consider he's a 50-year-old guy working a day job his entire life, quits, moves to America. For the first time in his life, he's a working professional musician. I'm an artist now. I'm an artist. A year later, it's all gone. Do I have to quit and go back to that life? And he literally says, I don't think I can do it, but he was on the precipice. So I think if you have a heart, you just connect with that. You just connect with somebody going for it. Go for your dream. That's why we're all here. Go for your dream. Go for it. And when somebody takes one on the chops, it just makes you want to root for them more.
So true. Wow. You got to come back to this show anytime in the future, dude. There's so much of your story that we need to learn.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And it's great digging into it because I do think, like you said, there's a lot of guitar minutia, guitar detail. We can talk about solders, capacitors. But I think there's some more meat on the bone there as well in terms of just going for it as an artist. And, you know, like I said, yeah, taking some on the chin, but then just taking another step forward.
Absolutely. Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you, my friend. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Guy.